Okay.
Everybody click the button. Okay. Okay. Pricing your cleanup work, September 10th. I put the news on this morning and I regretted it because I was like, oh my goodness, I can't do this 9/11 stuff. I mean, it's just so sad. But so pricing your cleanup work, I'm glad so many of you showed up today because absolutely a good topic and it came right from you guys. So thank you. I know we've talked about pricing before. We're definitely going to get into the difference here. I think part of the difference, Sarah, wouldn't you think, revolves around like when you do the pricing, do you put in your mind that you're going to want to encourage getting the job ongoing, so you want to offload maybe the thought that if you price it right, you can get the cleanup and the ongoing? What do you think?
Personally, I do feel like it might be presumptuous of us to think that, depending on why they've come to us. But I really think that it would be of value to have maybe a presumptuous end game in mind with that, so that when you're thinking of the pricing, you can kind of do it in two ways. I don't know how many of you feel that they do turn into ongoing jobs, or if it's just a project. I mean, there are times where you're just involved in just a project. You're either coming on and collaborating with someone, and that's okay. That's just a project, and that you don't have to think about it turning into something more than that. It's almost a relief a little bit. Other times you can come into it with, if it's you solo, it's you direct, then yes. So there's two formats, I guess, you could take from it and go forward with how to price it. I do like when I am in a collaborative environment, I do actually enjoy that. Like, okay, I'm going to do this and here's your package. You know, that is kind of nice and relieving. But
now, did you hit record?
Mhm.
You did?
Yeah.
Okay. I have my
you've
screen
got your
already.
full screen. You've got everything on here too.
What you can see, can't you just see the PowerPoint, or you see? No,
Everything.
I see you. You see yourself?
Yeah, we can see ourselves. I see
Okay,
Tony
so I don't have the PowerPoint.
Steve
All right,
is
let me do
there,
this.
and
It should be that. Is that better?
that's better. That looks nice.
Yeah, that makes no sense because I picked the other screen. Okay,
So,
but one
guess-
thing, Sarah, though, I have
I was going to ask Linda though, if what kind of our struggles like you had on that last slide?
Yeah.
I know you.
I didn't mean to go ahead a slide either. Here we
No,
go.
it's okay. I know that you're kind of really quick about, you do a quick summation right away. You've already got it sort of sussed out in your mind. I don't know if sometimes, if those of you, when you're dealing with a project that comes to you like this, is the struggle where to start? Is the struggle like how to evaluate? What are the main points of the struggle for you when you're looking at a project and it feels very dysfunctional or kind of fractured in the information that you're given?
Well, Julie said in the chat that the cleanup she's done usually want quarterly checkup, but not the ongoing.
Okay. Oh, that's it. That's it. Okay.
So does
That's
that
not
mean they have
bad.
a bookkeeper and on staff, Julie? Is that what's happening, or?
I think they're doing it themselves, and initially they don't know what they're doing, so they make a big mess, and then I go clean it up and I give them some tips on what to do moving forward, and they go ahead and do it, and then want to know, quarterly, does everything look okay? But I've been lucky that they're people that document well and pretty much do it correctly, but
Yeah.
just a few nuances they don't understand. But I haven't had anybody say they want to do monthly bookkeeping after a cleanup. But as far as the other question, all of the above for me. I don't know where to start.
Yeah, I was just seeing that. I don't know where to start.
I don't have a process.
Advanced planning cost is always a struggle. And I think too.
Steve had his hand raised too.
Yes, hi.
can't see anybody's faces. This whole screen thing, whatever I did in my settings, trying to get the doorbell to work. Now I'm just so not techie. It's like I hit the screen to save on this side. I can't see anybody's faces, so I don't even know if anybody's saying anything. So you have to monitor that because I can't see it at all, which is weird. You'll have to help
Steve,
me
go for
offline.
I think that what I experience is a combination of the client is in a big hurry all of a sudden for the cleanup. And so they press right away. What's it going to cost? Oh, you mean I have to give you all this information? Oh my God, how am I going to do that? Getting the information from them and then finding all the surprises and putting that all together and getting through the shock factor with them of what really has to be done. All of that up front. I'm getting better at controlling that, but boy, oh boy, it's hard to price them and keep the client calm and get everything all at once put together.
I had a friend in New York that he was on council, and his whole model, his business model, is to do, when he gives a project and he presents it to the person, he actually presents the project. And then what he does is he gives the monthly price. If you sign up for 2 years, it's this. If you sign up for 1 year with him, it's this. And the cleanup's free. And he's super successful with that. I don't know.
Say that again.
I mean,
And you've
okay.
got to build that in, right?
Oh, you're building it in. Absolutely.
Yeah.
You don't give anything
Okay.
for free, right? But
You've
instead of,
been
he's kind of
holding out on
deferring,
me on this.
he's deferring, somebody you know too, he's deferring the money down the road, basically, because he's not taking the big money up front when he's doing all the work. He's front loading the work, right? So he's paying out, I'm sure, his staff and everything else. And then, yeah, and then he's bundling it in there, right? He has to be bundling it in there. So if the project is, 12 grand to do the cleanup, he puts 1,000 more on the monthly and then continues on, but now he's got a higher monthly. Sarah's not so sure. I'm going to try to fix my settings now. Julie gave me a tip. I know
It's interesting.
No, he doesn't.
I don't know. How do you guys feel about it? Anyone have like kind of like a or like, hey, it sounds okay, or I'm willing to try it, or
That would make me so nervous to do that, not knowing what I'm getting myself into.
yeah.
What if halfway through you say, oh, this is a disaster. I don't even want this.
Or
That's what I'm
what if
thinking too. Yeah.
the person pays you for 3 months after you gets through the cleanup and then says, I don't really want you anymore. I hired somebody else. What are you going to do? You're going to sue them? You can't sue them. I don't know. I don't
Well,
know.
that
I just,
engagement has to be ironclad.
yeah, but
Have-
then
have
you're
someone
not going
on
to spend
council.
time. You're going to
You're
spend
not
time
going
in
to.
court.
No, you're not
No.
going to want to. So, but yeah, Rosanna, you had your hand raised too.
Yeah, I mean, what Liliana said, I think, what if the client decide, oh, I'm done with you, or like, I don't want you to do my month, I don't want to pay monthly service anymore for you. And then you did the 3 months cleanup completely, and then thinking you continue till another year, and it's not happening.
I love what Angela wrote in here. I feel like I would be devaluing my services in doing that, even though I eventually get the money. Yeah, you'd have to. I guess you'd have to have upfront capital to want to make that drive. That's what I would think.
And Maura has a question too.
Yeah.
Well, I feel like for me, I kind of do the opposite. This is my first law client, so I hope I priced him right. I have not priced the cleanup yet, which is why I'm very interested today for sure, because I don't know where to start. But for me, I would rather start high and then come back down to be like, oh, look, I cleaned you up and now we can save money because you're in a good place. And I feel like for me, that's worked with some of my other clients of being like, okay, I reevaluate every quarter. And I think maybe I just got a guy who like knew, thankfully, that he needed help. So he was very agreeable to a higher monthly rate when I talked to him. So, but for me, I feel a little bit better like starting high and coming down than starting down or like across the board and hoping that I make that up in the long run. Because yeah, I guess in my own engagement letter, it's like, this isn't a full contract and I just need 30 days notice, which I would obviously change if I did it your friend's style. But I don't know, I feel like that you're leaving yourself open to a lot.
Yeah, I have a rule about I don't sue a client. That's kind of a rule. I think I learned that from Michelle Long. I never sue a client. Just not good practice. So I wouldn't want to put myself out there. I could just see some smart attorney. I'll take this job on for whatever the monthly price is. And then all of a sudden, when the conversion is done, I found a cheaper one. I went to whoever, and that's the new accountant. And then what am I going to do? How much time and effort do I want to throw into chasing down something like that too? I don't know. I just wouldn't sit well with me, but he's super successful with this. Like, he's in New York and it works. That's how he advertises that he does it. So
Is he catering to attorneys?
no, not attorneys. No.
Okay.
So, I mean, but still putting
Well,
yourself
I
out
think
there.
it's the market too. I think it's a different market,
Yeah. I don't know. All right, I'm gonna try again. I clicked a few buttons, but I'm dangerous when I do that. Okay, so now I'm looking at my screen. I'm gonna pick desktop one because I know that's where the thing is, even though I want it in the other way. Now do you all see just the weights of the scale?
Yes,
Okay, nobody was saying anything. I'm like,
I know.
okay. Oh, it's going back and forth, no matter what I touch. Okay, let's go back. So I don't know why it's so sensitive today. It could be me. All right, so everybody's pretty much got the same struggle. So Sarah, why don't we go into the file? I shouldn't even have shared again. Why don't we go into the file and then start to go through some of the steps. I'm going to pull up while you're doing that. I'm going to pull up our handout on for today. We've got a checklist for you that will help you.
Can we kind of look at it really quick and just kind of review?
Yeah, I just got to find it.
This,
Okay.
think of this as a foundation for ourselves. What are the areas that we want to concentrate on? Because a lot of people said gathering data, collecting data is hard, the rush speed of it. This is Linda did a fantastic job on this.
So it's actually going to be in the PowerPoint. So I'm going to put the PowerPoint, and it has a link to it, which you'll see on the last slide where you might have just seen because I clicked through the things, and you'll be able to access this, right from there. And I made it shareable. So hopefully I don't have to, like last week, have to let you all in like I did last week. But yeah, so we would start with open up the file and go through the notes. So we would ask the client in the discovery phase, we're going to ask the client, hey, Mr. Attorney, I need your last good tax return. I need to know where you left off with the IRS. And sometimes that's a surprising answer. We sometimes get the answer back and like, oh, so the last one you did was 2017? And then you can have an idea of what you're working with, right? Once you get the tax return, right on it's going to tell you what they are. Because sometimes when you ask attorneys, they don't know the answer to this question.
And if they've made an election change, where's that election?
That too.
paperwork? Where's the letter?
Mhm.
Because that's right now a big sticky point with IRS.
And sometimes that happens, like we've seen that happen midstream too. It's like, really? You did this in May 23rd? It's like, okay, you changed from a partnership to this. It's like, yeah.
You want to
okay.
know what you're working to is kind of the goal. You really do want to know, are
Yeah.
you working to doing an S Corp election? Are you in a partnership? It's really important as you're doing the cleanup work, right? So
But not only that, Sarah, too, because when you're working, especially a lot of you guys work with the solo attorneys, they could be any of these. So you can look at that and look at their books, and their books might just say owners this and owners that, and you're like, okay, but then when you realize that that's just the default template, they don't even have very good chart of accounts. So you sometimes can't get the answer in the books. So it's best to have the tax return so you can validate that. And like Sarah asked that question. There's another question. We actually had an attorney that we asked what basis she was, filing her tax return on, and you can get that off the tax return as well. But before we even had it with her, we asked her what her basis was, and she said, I don't know what everybody else is, I guess cash basis. And then met with the tax accountant, and he's like, no, she's accrual based. Like we had already done the work for a couple of months, so it was.
yeah. Okay, so with the legal software, does it integrate? If not,
Yes,
are you
that's
doing
another good
a
question.
two-party? Are you doing a two-party system, a manual system on either side? If
I
you're
try to
doing a
put as many
desktop-
of the common ones in here too, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
If
is
you're
it desktop?
It's how manual is that? Because a lot of these practice management softwares don't integrate out.
And
So
maybe I'll go back in here and edit it, Sarah, and put like a little D in parentheses, so we know that those are the desktop ones, because you know, those are ones you're gonna know they're not integrated, right? If they're using QBO. And it's a good, maybe an extra question to ask. Is it integrated? Is it a standalone? Do you have the trust in a standalone and it's not integrated with the main software, which I think I might, nope, I don't have that here.
if you're accepting merchant services, how does that work? Does it integrate? Same with payroll services. Kind of these, like, so think of this as a foundation to understanding how you're going to think about pricing, right? You're collecting the data, kind of what we brought up earlier in dialogue and conversation is once you're collecting all of this, how much data are you collecting? Do you have a surprise account? I can't tell you. I get the bank login and I'm like, why are there 4 more accounts here that kind of have like $2 in them? But then I opened them up and I can see all this activity. Oh, well, we just tried a system and it didn't work. I'm sorry. They're relevant to that year's books. I hate to tell you. Now I've got to charge extra for this.
And what's
So-
interesting about this too, Sarah, which how many times have we worked with attorneys and they've got the payroll, it's completely separate, like it's maybe Gusto and it's not integrated, like the people are either manually typing in a journal entry or they're just disregarding it. And at the end of the year, they give it all to the tax person. So they just book the checks into payroll clearing or something like that. And it's like, do you know that if it's set up on the back end in Gusto, it can just push in? But I can tell you, I don't think we've had many that have had that set up. We've had to set that up all the time.
Yeah, I guess it's part of the consideration. I guess it's a great point and a tip to think about. To your point, Linda, is making sure what can integrate. So maybe you're not going to do it on the cleanup, but if you're thinking of the future plans, we're going to integrate this, we're going to change the
Right.
system. So you might have to separate a couple things. Sometimes, I will say this for myself personally, I sometimes literally have to draw like 3 lines, like a pros and cons list a little bit, but I'm just going A, B, C. And I'm just developing in my brain of like, okay, here's where we are. This is where we want to be. This is the ideal. That might be able to help you as you're structuring this. And as we scroll through this, and this is, you all can kind of like revisit this and add to it and things like that. But as you go through this, you're going to make some determinations of volume of work. Is everything lumped into the header account? Do we want to separate it? How much time will that take me? And it kind of continues on. It's a theme. So this is a great foundation piece to get you to think about these things. And as you think about the tax return too, it sounds kind of weird. Coming into this, we see this once in a while where Linda and I will get a client that's like filed the tax return. The person left mid-year. Everything looks great. Okay, so we're assuming someone's body of work up until this day. No, we are going to have to price just to kind of give you a thought process. So everything looks good to Q2. Well, we're going to, in our evaluation, we're going to make a determination. Do we have to roll back? Do we want to go into the first 6 months? Think about that as you're pricing this, because you're taking the responsibility on of someone else's work, whether it be the owner, the prior accounting person on staff, or the prior firm that was working with them. They might have an elaborate distribution setup, a payout system you're not aware of. That could catch you. These are so many little nuances. And kind of like to what Liliana said, I don't know if I'd want to work with you after I do a cleanup to that end, right? So I would caution in the thought process. And when you're pricing, when you're getting into the meat of pricing, these are little intricacies that you want to ask as you're just doing that discovery call. So develop this more in line with the way that you would think about it too. This might be a great start, and then take it on from there.
Yeah, so if you get that client that you get into their books and you're doing the cleanup and you're like, oh my goodness. And Sarah and I just had this recently happen to us, that we met with them in the discovery and then we got a little bit going with them. They asked for us to give them a price. We went into the file and we're like, we don't really want this person. You know, we didn't really care for them in the discovery part of it. So we just threw a big number at it and then never hear from them again because we don't really want to work with them. So then if they do turn around and hire you, then yay, you got a big number. But if they don't, in all likelihood, then you're rid of them. So you've gotten rid of them. So you don't have to worry about it. But I mean, that happens. You sometimes learn as you're going through this that you might not want that person at all in their account. And you could tell that the better clients are the ones that are responsive and they're engaged, they're active, they really want to know how to grow their business. That's the more fun client to work with than the one that, like I have one, we call him Mr. MIA. He resurfaces at tax time and on extension. Like he's probably going to call me on the 14th and say, hey, and I've asked him questions and I'm just a straight up nag to him and he ignores everything, phone calls, everything. But then he'll come and it'll be a big rush to get it done. And that's not a client I really want to work with that much, other than he's a super nice guy. But
So
yeah.
Linda and I are curious. First off, does this, if you don't have something like this, does this help you? How do you guys feel about this? Yeah. Okay, good. So this value right there, right? And then the next
Mhm.
part is we're curious. Some of you have put in the chat, but what are the struggles in pricing exactly? So we can help kind of before we jump into other things. Can you
file
give
again.
us something to help you sort of discuss right now to help you get past this hurdle or talk about it collectively? Okay, so Julie, yeah, and unmic, feel free. But let's see here. I'm gonna try and read.
I was saying I might rearrange that too because I put that PowerPoint together. But go ahead, Maura.
Excuse me, for me, just because this will be my first one, how much, I guess, time, like someone else said, because my daughter's here. My client has never connected anything to QuickBooks. So he has his Clio and he has his QuickBooks. Nothing's been reconciled ever. And it's only since 2019, but also I do know that like each client could have several different things under them. So I guess trying to determine like what the actual work scope is for my very first one, and then hopefully I'll get more after that.
Okay, that's a good one. And then I think Julie is in the same kind of vein of that, right? Julie, you're saying unknowns, how much time will it take?
Yeah, I've never been a good judge of how much time it's going to take. I always think it's going to take less than it does. And then if I've given a flat rate, I'm losing out big time. And I also don't want to tell them, oh, it's going to take, 3 months for me to do this. And then have them be like, well, that's ridiculous. So,
Mhm.
I don't know how to judge it.
Sure. Yeah.
Have you
okay,
ever tried to time it and then have you ever tried to time yourself doing a task? There's a lot of unknowns when doing trust, right? Because you can get sucked down a big rabbit hole when you're trying to work with trust. But have you ever done a task like, let's just say that you noticed that there's a huge amount of undeposited funds that you're going to have to address. Have you ever tried to time it so that you could see, I thought it was going to take an hour and it took me 2, or thought it was going to take an hour and it take me 3. So you could kind of get a gauge on that, or?
I don't think I've ever consciously done that for that purpose, which is a great idea. I should do that just to.
I think too, though, I think one of the things
Linda,
is not
what
to
we
have
could
your,
do-
yeah.
One idea I'm thinking is what we could do is, and I've done this to myself, Julie. I've gotten on a Zoom. I have my little timer, and I'm just zooming myself with my screen up so that I can see, especially when I'm kind of getting the gauge. And sometimes I record what I'm doing because I want to show. I'll take a snippet of it. I don't do it as often, but I did it in the beginning because I was trying to understand what the heck am I struggling with. So I can go back and see myself. It's just for myself. It's for no one else.
I mean, I think that's a great idea. I think doing the task, if you already have a process and and you're doing the task from the beginning is one thing though, but then trying to deconstruct what someone else did, and you've got to kind of figure out it like a detective, what happened. That's where I get into trouble because I
Okay, so-
start going down rabbit holes that I didn't know were there. And
So this is what I say with cleanup. I personally, and we talked, Linda, we kind of mentioned this last week. I price it like it's a monthly. And then I have to factor a percentage of overage run for myself. Now, sometimes we've done this before. Linda and I
Accurate if
have
they
done
pay you
this.
by credit card too.
Yeah.
Heather,
Sometimes what we've gone through ourselves personally is once you do that scenario, and I lay out a few scenarios for us, we kind of do some math equations on there. In the engagement, now this goes back to engagement letters.
well,
And I'd like to hear what others think about this or what you've done in this, but in the engagement, you may need an out as far as like, you might convert, it might become more complex. It might go out of scope quicker. This includes X if everything is within X. If we have out of scope items unknown, and that is a big dialogue. I would not just put that in writing. I would have it in writing as a backup to the conversation that we're having with the person. Especially, there's a few of us in this group we've met with, and there have been some complex things that have come up and things that look very simple on the onset. You're like, okay, it's pretty straightforward. And then you find out that there was no recording of X, Y, and Z, or there is no backup data for you to rely on to price that correctly, or they can't get a hold of it. Like we've talked about, some of us can't even get the bank stuff, right? Like, so
I think too, Sarah, don't you think when you start to, because there's a big areas we really got to dig into that are out of the norm, because we can kind of get used to like undeposited funds, you got to do the matching and stuff like that. But the two big areas are trust and also advanced client cost reconciliation. So first need to be looking at that, but also you want to, what we found when Sarah and I kind of dig into it together, we start to see patterns. Like you started at the beginning of wherever it was last done, last physically balanced that you can validate. Don't go by what they say. We had one guy, he swore on the Bible that it was balanced on January of like 2020. And it was not. It was not. We had to present to him to prove that because the girl before us said it was. Where's your documentation? Didn't have it. And it was like, we need the paperwork, and they didn't have it. And it was, he wouldn't let go. He was like a dog with a dog toy that wouldn't let go of that. Well, it was done. And he kind of resisted us going all the way back. We had to go all the way back to like 2015 because that's where it was last balanced, which by happenstance was when they started. So we had to go back to when it was zero and start to, we just rebuilt it. Instead of trying to figure out the mess, we put a whole new file together and we started on their books 2020. So the beginning of the balances were 2020 and we pulled in the balance sheet. And then we back built the IOTA all the way back to 2015. It's the only account we back built. It's not the attorney's money, the bank balance is the offset, and we rebuilt that entire string. So we didn't rebuild all their books.
Yeah,
We didn't
that's a
rebuild all
valid
their books.
point.
We only rebuilt IOTA.
because what we did in that scenario was we were contracted. So let's say you get your cleanup job, you're contracted for 1 year back, right? Because they haven't filed their tax return. A lot of times that's what's happening, right, Steve? Like you mentioned, like this is a rush job. I got to get my tax return done, and I have a big mistake. So we have a contract for a period to go so far back. If that, and that's where I was mentioning in the engagement, if something tilts the hand to go further back, that is out of scope and a new engagement will be offered at that time. Do you see what I mean? That's what I'm saying, because that trust. So we've heard scenarios, you might have all heard these different ones. Sometimes with trust account work, strictly trust account work on the trust side only. Sometimes people do an hourly rate and they do up to, and then a conversation happens. So it's kind of like a retainer. And then it just kind of keeps going. Like things like this keep happening in the engagement. But what I'm trying to help you all with is when you're looking at a pricing structure, sometimes it's easier to think of how much am I going to price it on a monthly, working backwards. That's a fair way to assess it, right? Do you have a setup fee that you typically do? If you do, great. If you don't, sometimes people have what they call an onboarding fee. It's the time spent helping you collect all the data because the owner's going to dump it on you. Really, like here, I'll get you logins. You have to babysit them to get everything. Time delays. How many of you in your engagement, Linda and I have talked about this, we've never enforced it. How many of you in your
We
engagement
have done it though, but she's right,
Yeah.
we haven't enforced
offer
it.
an out on time delays? Do you guys offer an out of your services on time delays? Anybody? No? Okay. You guys know what I'm talking about?
Okay,
If.
well, let's put it this way, when you're doing a project and you need certain documents to proceed, what usually stops the project? It's not your side of the work, it's always them, right? They didn't give you the document because they're all happy in the beginning and then all of a sudden, when you really need more stuff, it just stops. So yes, we talked about putting it in the contract. If we don't get X, because if we're promising, like we just did one that we promised we'd be done by September 30th. If we don't put it in the contract that if you don't give me I can't do the work if you don't give me what I need, the tools. So if you don't give it to me, I'm not gonna be able to hold my promise up to that date. I can't if I don't have what I need to do it. So we have to put that caveat into the contract so that they know that they're responsible. And if they don't send it to you, you got to go back to the contract, and in the contract, it says this.
Yeah.
So we actually, didn't we have that with a Lake of Lien Law thing too? Remember, sorry, we did do this because if we get to some point where the person's going to start to use lien law, we needed a client list and we need it formatted like lien law wants it because they won't do anything to help you on that side. So you get the list and then it's like they don't give you the list and you present them with the list and you're waiting for them to approve it because you don't want to put it in and then they go, oh, that's not what I wanted in there. That's not how I wanted it. Now it's in there. That's happened. So you want to make sure that you have what you need, but you got to get approval from them. So that can hold the project up. And then when you look at it that way, a lot of times it's lien laws dragging. It takes them a time, like that you give it to them and like by Friday, you're like, where's my data? And then it's another week and another week. Now that's slowed the project down.
Now, you know how passionate Linda is on this topic, but Linda, I have to ask you, please go look at Tanya's comment and read it out loud for us because I think that's adorable. I just
gonna have a 500-page contract. You know, when I first started with the rental agreements, it was 1 page and it's now up to like 10. The stuff people have done to you. So you just start to, I think I mentioned that before. Like,
actually, you bring up a good point and something we should all be thinking about too is if we're cleaning up in current product, if we're cleaning up to move to another product, we have pricing on that, right? There's value to us doing that, project managing it, moving it over. There's segments. So your engagement, I think personally, would be a reflection of kind of your work foundation is what I keep calling it. Because to me, it's a foundation. We clean up the first product, or is that in the old product? Then we move to the new product. Or do you stay in the old product and I start a whole new file and clean you up in there and then bring you in with some pieces? And feel free if you have questions. I mean, please ask because this is a lot. It's not supposed to be straightforward. It is involved and it's a lot of conversation. And that's why on a discovery call, you need to ask a lot of these questions up front. So build out that checklist for yourself as best you can, but also give yourself the time and space to be paid for the evaluation of that. This is a big ask. Do you know what I mean?
but when it comes to pricing too, like do you think, Sarah, it's different to price a cleanup for a solo person than it is to do what's the difference between a solo and a mid-market firm size?
Well, I'll take a stab and you'll have to share your opinion. Solo is hard because they are really messy. it's all on them and they're doing it at 3 a.m.
They're doing it themselves mostly.
There's no point percent. It's harder. So you might want to factor in.
But then you see their checkbook and you know they can't afford that. Then what do you do?
Oh,
This, I don't know if it'll point towards her. This one has a bleeding heart when it comes to that kind of stuff. Miss Tough Girl is like, oh, but I really like them.
I do
But I really
sometimes. It depends on if I like you. No, I'm kidding.
them. They're so cute.
Once in a while, I will say once in a while, but not too much.
But it's true, because when it's just solo, we're the bigger firm, you know, you pull up their books, they got the money in the bank, they've got the ability to do that. Multiple partners, this is why I keep telling you guys about mid-market, multiple partners. So then you get a bunch of egos that are like, well, we need our books good, and we blah, 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 blah. And then all of a sudden, and then the cleanup is easier because usually there's a person involved, might be an admin that's got some minimum level of bookkeeping skills, or it might even be an actual bookkeeper, or we've had CFOs we've worked with. So you might have a decent set of books. If you're doing a conversion, that might be a different story, but you might find that as you're starting to go through doing the pricing, that you've got more flexibility to put more on it for you. Because with the smaller ones, you go in their checkbook and you see they have $800 there, then what? And I always think in my, I think in my head when I see that, you know what? I don't need this job right now. I'd like to help them. They have a credit card. So put that in your brain as you're putting the price together. They can pay over time. I'm not their bank. I don't front money for anybody. Sarah knows, you know, let's tell them $1,000 up. No, they have to pay the whole thing, especially when it comes to a solo, because they're more and more apt. They're really busy in their job, and usually they're at their wit's ends at that point. But most of the times they've been doing it themselves, and they're not bookkeepers and accountants. And they'll tell you that right up, like, I hate this stuff. And that's your opportunity to get the ongoing work, but it's also an opportunity that you'll know that you're going to do a significant amount of cleanup. Just get paid up front, you know, offer the credit card. And I know some people don't like to do that, but it's well worth, add a little bit in for the fee and offer it up, and then the person can pay you, and then they can pay the credit card over time.
So something that's worked for us is a substantial retainer down, and then your card is on file, and at intervals, we will charge it. It's our decision on when we're going to do that, because that's how we're building our project engagement. It's similar. If you think about the firm is doing the same thing in reverse to their client.
Mhm.
Attorneys do not come without a price tag, correct? Like now,
And
the other thing too, Linda, and maybe you can touch on this, is that urgency. We've had a few that have gotten in trouble on compliance, not tax related, state related compliance issues. How do you guys all feel about rush job fees?
because that costs more, right? You have to do it. I mean, our staff worked on Saturday and Sunday. It costs more to get it done. So we should be paid for that.
There should be a thing that we call it out. You've asked for a rush job.
Mhm.
You're asking
Yes.
for us to turn this around. You're telling me I need to take time away from what I've already had booked.
You worded that really well too in an email. I'm trying to remember how you worded it. I was like, oh, this is so good.
Oh,
If I
go
find
back
it, I'll
and
share
look
it
at
with you
it.
guys, because it was like, she didn't say rush job, because that sounds like, I don't know, it sounds like something in construction, right? She put it in there. I was like, oh, this is great. And I probably have it on.
I know which one you're thinking of too.
It was just the words you had put together. I was like, that is perfect
I don't
words.
know what I
because
say.
It exactly explains, you know, that they've got, we've had them come to us and they're sitting there with the auditors waiting to get the books to do the compliance piece, because the court has made them have to do that.
Yeah.
So when you have that, you have to consider that that's on us, that we're going to be working the entire weekend, and so is the staff. So they should pay more for that, time and a half or whatever you want to consider it, because it's more work.
So how many of you feel a little bit better at where we are in the conversation, or still have moments that we want to delve into?
You guys want numbers. That's why you came, right? You want to know some price numbers. I know it.
Okay, so one thing is, what is your base? I know Gianna was so open and good about, like, she was like, I don't really have a base, and then we identified the base in that one call. How many of you felt like you wanted to identify a base for yourself? Just anybody. Go for it. Steve.
I do it.
I've been itching. this system works for me. I'm not saying it's the one for everybody, but you've hit a lot of nails on the head for me. I generally will take a minimum of $1,000 retainer. And there's an initial checklist after the interview with the client. And then all of that goes into the letter of agreement. In the letter of agreement, there's a paragraph that spells out all what happens if the surprises or when the surprises come along that we'll review with them. And I keep track of that on the document that I mentioned in last week's meeting, which is the scope creep document for that client. That's where I keep track of all the surprises so that I'm organized when I get ready to present those to them. I also keep track in 15-minute increments, every single thing I do for that client, every day, every hour, every minute, so that I can document everything for when I report back to them. And then I set up progression meetings with them, regular meetings that I hold them accountable to. And then I, like you, get the credit card. I get an evergreen retainer. I do whatever I have to do. I had one attorney up in Wyoming who had over 4,000 trust transactions that were out of balance. And it went back several years, and it took me 6 months to clean her up. And she knew she had to do it because she was in trouble with the bar. And so I initially priced her out at $1 per trust transaction and hit the jackpot. She ended up paying me almost $9,000 when it was done. But
Good work.
that's what's worked for me. I'm not
Yeah.
saying that's the right system, and I'm learning a lot here this morning, but
Yeah.
that's kind of what, and that took a lot of pain to get to this system.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, that took a lot of getting burned by some people to get to this.
True.
I hope that helps, but
It's so valuable. I think the way you described it is so uniquely different that I love it. It complements it makes me think about, oh, hey, that's a great idea. I love this. And that's what I'm hoping we do here today is provide ourselves opportunity to grow together through this process. Our system is not. Linda and I developed it together. I mean,
It's changing. But Steve, when you, I'm intrigued by what you just said. So when you put that first message out with discovery questions that they have to answer, and as they answer them, that builds into your engagement. Do you have that like automated so that it goes like out of a, I'm thinking 17 hats, where you gather the information and then you can have it as a custom field into your document, or do you actually manually just like cut and paste?
well, I like the form that you presented this morning. That's going to help a lot. But what I do is I just have a Word document open and I'm typing notes as I'm talking to them. I let them know that I'm doing that.
Mhm.
And then I can cut and paste, I can work the verbiage out afterwards, and I can cut and paste that into the letter of agreement. And it also says, I list out all the things that we discussed that we're going to do for them. And then it says it does not include things such as, and then there are examples of what it doesn't include. And that usually are the things that I smell as surprises that might be coming. So that gives me ammunition later when I go back to them and say, oh, I just discovered, you haven't reconciled since 2002 in this account or whatever, you know?
Yeah.
I didn't think I had to reconcile. It's connected to the bank.
Yeah.
Are you role playing right
Right?
now, my dear? You're so good at that.
Thank
So
you.
Steve, I have a question for you. I love what you have a retainer, like we're talking the same language, right? For
Well,
the
they get it.
attorneys.
Attorneys
They
get
get it.
that. They're
Yeah.
expecting it.
We
So
saw it up
do
front
you-
deposit, and Sarah said, change it to retainer. They all understand that better. And I'm like, okay.
Exactly. Retainer,
do you
totally. They're
do-
like, oh yeah, that's fine.
Is
Mhm.
there like a different structure if it's depending on the size of the firm or the gross dollar? Because some people look at gross dollars of the firm too, annual. gross dollars.
It's the size of the firm, the type of law that they're practicing,
Okay.
and the number of transactions that I initially see on their books.
Beautiful. So that's a little, I appreciate you bringing that up because I was curious about that because that's something that we look at too. Obviously, we look at everything we possibly can. You're not going to get it all during the evaluation or discovery, but
Yeah,
I
that
love those
initial
steps.
$1,000 is just to talk to me and kind of see where we're at,
I love it.
But they're buying your expertise. You've got expertise in this. And, it was, something I watched, the QB Community Live thing that he did yesterday with a young man that I had met when I was admin of QB Community Live. Very nice kid. And he just started his business. If anybody's interested, you should go and watch that because he basically bootstrapped his accounting business, but it's also, he's starting out. So his whole point of when he invoiced his first few clients, he did it $25 an hour. And I don't want any of you guys doing that because you're investing in your education, but he did it. So if you're new at this, don't try to, this is why we really didn't want to give you a number because there's so many variables. But like this kid did it for $25 an hour with the hope of getting the work ongoing. But he told him straight out, look, I am brand new at this. And he said this, it was really, he was so articulate. He did almost the whole talking for the show, but he said, look, my pricing is this because I'm brand new. And I want you to know that there's going to probably be mistakes and we're going to work through it together. And so if you're brand new at this, have that comfort level to have that conversation and dialogue with them. They might want to go with you because of that, of your honesty, and you're straight up telling them like, this is my first real cleanup job. And this is where I'm at. Because you know what, when I first started doing this work, I undercharged, completely undercharged. And I undercharged up to not that long ago until I started meeting people on council and we all got together and we all like collectively like grew our billing muscles and said like, we're doing here now. We're getting the muscles in, you know, so like if we collectively go, yeah, let's do it. It makes a difference. It gives you that confidence. Like, you know what? I know this stuff and I'm not going to undersell myself. But if you're brand new and you're kind of working through and you're not that confident in it and you're going to work with the client, that's also an option too. Don't feel ashamed of having to do that. We all have to start somewhere.
So Yolanda has a great question for you, Steve. She is asking, is it like a diagnostic review? And I think what the question is that $1,000, where does that come in maybe in the life cycle of the initial contact with the client?
Yeah, the initial $1,000 is for me just to get into their QuickBooks, take a look at the number of transactions, when things were last reconciled, what their chart of accounts looks like, you know, sort of a basic diagnostic review without getting super deep into it before I'm asking for documents and things like that. But just for me to look at your books, you know, does that help?
Yeah, I think so.
I mean, Joy and I were in a Zoom meeting earlier this morning, and there was one of our members who's and jump in here, Joy, who's in a completely different industry, and she doesn't do diagnostic reviews anymore. She's been doing it and has grown her business so well with this system that she, just by the questions that she asks them, she's able to quote the price and hasn't been burned and is making money. I mean, she's just amazing. But I don't know if that would work in the legal field or not with trust money and all the different issues that we have.
Go for it.
That same person shocked us all because she said she has it down under 3 minutes flat as to what her whole process of onboarding.
I can tell you in my experience of doing this over the years, I've screwed up. I almost said the bad word. I've screwed up in my pricing, and sometimes saving grace, I've managed to get the client ongoing and I've made it up. And sometimes it's a learning experience because pricing is an art form. It truly is an art form.
I'm curious, when you're saying 3 minutes, I'm just curious what that means exactly under 3 minutes. Help me understand that.
She's not even looking at their documents?
No, she said she doesn't even look at the documents.
Okay.
She knows what questions to ask and how they answer, and she has a price already figured out for it.
Her first question must be, how much is in your operating account?
Well, it's not legal, Linda. It's not legal.
It's not legal. And she had to go through a lot of pain to get her system to where it's at.
Okay.
But good for her. I mean,
good for her. I mean, really, see, that's the thing. It's got to work for you too. And you guys know this. There's so many of people that have been in our industry for a very long time that will say, it's very customized. It's very tailored. I feel like we should use those words, especially in the legal. It really is in a lot of ways. Those are some key words to use, but it's also, you have got to want to like to do it, right? You've got to want to wake up and do it. So that's the thing. It's like, what's going to drive you? Like, we've got all these goals and everyone's like, let's grow. Well, does it mean, do you want to grow, or do you want to just kind of flatline too? That's okay. Like, do what works for you and what you can take on. It's your quality of life as well. So
sometimes I really think maybe from us, like you just said, Steve, looking at the chart of accounts can tell the whole story, or the balance sheet
Yeah.
I can look at the balance sheet and see how messed up this is. And then the profit and loss, just look at the financials, look at the chart of accounts. And pretty much just in those 3 places, Sarah and I can pretty much sum up. Sometimes in the conversation with the person too, we can sum up. Oh,
It's
this one's
so
going to be
funny.
expensive, or this one's like, maybe not. This is interesting. Sometimes it's what the other client might have to give too, but practice area is definitely a big piece of this as you
Yeah.
start to price out, because immigration firm, they might do a ton of accounts receivable and not have a lot of trust. PI firm, you might be looking at a ton of costs in there and they're not in the right places. Maybe
Yes,
somebody
my costs,
cost
yeah.
of goods sold. We've seen that, like, ooh, yeah, So
I like what you said, though, to recap what Steve was saying too, Linda, is I felt like what he helped identify was it just depends on the practice area and like that's, he's just saying like, I do 1,000. But it also depends on certain, it might slide based on what type of firm you are. I know there's some of us in the group that are hourly, which is okay. So factor that maybe. Calculate it if you're trying to come up with flat rates to offer, or a do not exceed, or an exceed with X factor. Like it depends. Every situation is unique.
And sometimes the client, if you do hourly, if you can kind of guesstimate your hours, sometimes that will avoid the friction of them arguing about how many hours it took. Like they get argued with in their own firm from their own clients, but also you give them that price up front and they're like, well, oh, wow. And I'm like, but now this is it. So, if I end up in your IOLTA to digging it out for 25, 30 hours, that's on me. So, that gives them a comfort level of knowing that there's a fixed fee to it. So sometimes that is actually better than doing the hourly, but you have to track your time and all of that. But you do win some, you do lose some, and it's yeah. I have a family laws again, tons of invoices that are little tiny amounts, 250, 350, 500.
Because it eliminates billing. I like that, Julie. Steve, did you have something to add? I know you unmiked for a minute to.
Oh, I've always got something to add. I just think it's all in our systems too.
Yeah.
That example that Joy and I shared, this lady has her system so tightly locked. It's all in our systems, and I loved that checklist that you have this morning. I've been so lazy, I've never done that checklist, but I've got it all in my head.
But don't forget, if you guys look at it and you think like, Linda, you should rearrange, because I'm looking at it as I was going through it, going, I should rearrange some of this. Feel free to like reach out and say like.
Well, they can make a copy and put it in their drive and arrange as they need to, right? Like,
only because I'm looking at it like I think there's a few places I'd like to tweak it, but it is to give you a baseline just so you don't miss anything, because I've done a pricing and completely forgot to look at one of the places you really want to look at when you're doing this is go in and if it says it's reconciled, open up the reconciliation to see how many things from the past have not been reconciled, because you could go in there and then there's a ton of cleanup there because it's duplicates and things that were never addressed. How many were not how many still outstanding from past years that were on the trust? Now you got a whole other problem because it's the trust account.
well, there's
a
good
lot of things
point, Linda, because there's this other thing that just caught me. There was a loan on the balance sheet. When I looked inside of it, there were 4 loans to that loan line. Ouch. Nothing's been accurately done. 4.
You don't know that unless you clicked into that. So what if you didn't click into that and you already priced out for one loan? That's going to take you more time to fix, but you're not going to go back to the client and say, hey, you don't have, we do list in our engagement, we'll put how many checking accounts, because the more checking accounts, the more trust accounts, the more it's going to cost, because you have to do that multiple times too. So that's another factor.
So Yolanda, she made this amazing list, which she's going to share with everyone.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
I'm going to share it with you. You'll see. It's awesome. It's going to be on the PowerPoint. I'll put a link in the post too once I load it. Deanna's here, but she's in the car.
Well,
But-
my son gets out of school at 12 now, so I'm like I'm like in the car the whole time, and so now I just picked him up, dropped him off, so I'm like, hi.
I'm glad you made it.
What school is he in?
He goes to a charter school. It's called Achievement First.
Oh, there's some really good charter schools in Rhode Island. My grandson went to one last year.
Well, how do you all feel about today? I'm sure you feel like you have homework. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, I mean, we can, we can talk about this some more. Pricing is always a difficult thing to talk about. And I'd love to tell you that, okay, Sarah and I have one and it's got X amount of transactions and we charge 2,500 for this many. We don't do it that way. We don't, it's just not, we don't have that kind of a method. So for us to share the method, we've had them from, $1,000. We try not to do anything really under 2,500 because even if it's tiny, because you just don't know what kind of can of worms you're going to open up. So you want to kind of think in that 5,000 range, I think, when you start with it, depending on the size. If it's super small and the person's just starting, that's a different factor. So you have to really look at so many variables that, of course, next week's open forum week, if you want us to have eyes on and kind of walk you through and help you with that, we're more than happy to shut the camera off and go right in and dive into whatever you have that you need help with. We can all help you with whatever, because open forum week is always fun.
So Lee, I see that you're here and I never said hello to you, I don't think.
Leave
You out. I just saw that you joined.
Yeah, hello. Yeah, I got in late. I was having trouble with the link early on and got it late. So
Sorry to hear that. Well, it's nice to have you here. I know it's always nice to have everyone here, but I just I haven't had the opportunity to speak with you. So.
And Samantha's here too, with no kids.
Yeah.
in her- no
Sorry,
kids in
we've had a busy morning, but this call was awesome. I actually gave my law firm a new proposal and so this kind of reaffirmed the price I gave them and
Good.
they're going with somebody else, thankfully.
Oh, okay. Well, sometimes that's not a bad thing, right?
It's not.
Okay.
They have so much crazy that it's more of I made sure to put, if you need anything else, it's this much an hour, like to contact me. So
Perfect.
no,
That's a
this
good
was-
one too.
Yeah, and we've
Yes.
said that to somebody that we know we have to unravel. One thing I can tell you, if you see somebody, we are really strict on, like with this one guy that kept saying it was balanced since January 2020, and then we found out it wasn't. We were trying to do it backwards. Sometimes when you see something like that, just go back to where it was last reconciled. And if that's when it started out at 0, you have to do that. And you can offer like $95 an hour times both of us doing the work.
Yeah.
And, they're going to have to know that. With the bigger firms, they don't blink an eye. They don't think about it. And they charge $4.50 an hour. That's the beauty of working with attorneys. They understand that concept. So it's just that it's best to kind of put your mind around the fact that they usually can afford it. And when you do have that conversation with them, keep talking about compliance, talking about the importance of this trust account being accurate. And you start talking in their language and they understand that they're not talking to somebody who's never done a law firm account. And then you can give them that comfort level of knowing that you're going to get it done right. And let them know, I've done 15 of these. I've done something.
Good point, Linda. Actually, don't feel if you're getting pressured on the call to have to give a price. Don't feel it. Do not do it because what they're going to remember is that price.
Mhm.
Starting at.
They say that to you.
Starting at. Nope, I do
They'll
not
say
price until I evaluate the work. So give
Yep.
yourself the out. This is a very big thing. If there's one thing to take
Yep.
away at the end here. Just take that
Because
away.
they will do that. They'll say ballpark.
Nope, no ballpark. I'm sorry, I don't do that.
Ballpark. I've heard that so many times. Can you give me a ballpark amount? And I'll
Doesn't
be
the
like,
mechanic give you a ballpark when he doesn't know what's going on with the engine? Mm-mm. I don't
that's what
think
she
so.
says. Right? They
The
don't.
doctors can't do it either. That's kind of one of my little things that I say.
I'm so lucky I get to work with Sarah. Sometimes I just sit back and shut up, which is very rare for me. I
Yeah,
just
don't
let her
do
go.
starting
She gets
yet.
it.
Don't
She
even
gets
do
going.
starting.
I'm like,
I know. Oh God.
anybody,
Okay.
and I wanted to ask anybody here going to Scaling New Heights?
Yeah.
I know
who's
Lillian
going?
is. She's not on the screen. Anybody else? going?
Anybody? No?
No?
Okay.
Aw.
Can you tell us a little bit about it?
Well, it's an accounting conference. It's going to be in Fort Worth, Texas. Sarah and I are going to be teaching a couple of courses together, and I've got some of them I'm doing with Licio. And then it's probably one of it's probably the conference I would say, because QuickBooks Connect was always just fun. Content wasn't really good. I remember going to that last one going, I could teach almost every single thing I just sat through. Scaling's not that. It's more high level. And I'll never forget the day I was in the main stage and we were sitting in the front and Misty was giving the speech and she had everybody who's a pro advisor stand up. everybody who's an advanced pro advisor stand up, and half the room, more than half the room was still standing. And I had never thought that would be that many advanced pro advisors there. That's the level of what's there. It's more about the education than it is about the fun and the parties. There's really no fun parties. And then you don't have to go to their main stages because most of the time they're vendors trying to like push everything. Although the one when they pick the top pro advisor is probably the most fun. Their meal things that they do, I never go to them either because they're like too much about selling the Woodard Group. But the education that's in all the content, all the rooms, is phenomenal. And then being with your friends. That's the other part of it, especially with the conferences being so kind of rare and there's not really, I think QuickBooks Connect's going to come back though. I don't know. I have a feeling that it's going to come back. I don't know what it will look like, but I have a feeling that maybe next year they'll have, and I don't know that that's me, that's Linda guessing. Don't tell everybody, well, Linda was on advisory board. No, I don't know anything. Keyword was, but
10:04. So we're gonna
okay, yeah.
let everyone go and I'm gonna have breakfast.
Oh, Joanne's going to be there. I know Lily, and we want to get together. That's why I was asking. We want to do like a little meetup, and
Yeah,
then we can get online with Zoom with you guys. So we'll do it all together as long
Yeah,
as we're not.
private message us and let us know. So we can,
Yeah, please let us know. We would love to see you there. It's only around the corner if you live in Florida. Actually not.
Bye,
But,
everybody.
thank you. And then any ideas you have for another another session, let us know. And then next week, open forum. And yes, I said ideas. I was in Rhode Island for a week.
Bye.
Bye, everybody.